Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Colossians. We're in Colossians chapter 3. Today we're looking at verses 12 through 14. Now, in yesterday's session, we looked at verse 11, in which Paul told the Colossian believers that we're all one in Christ. All the old divisions, all the old barriers have disappeared. We are united as one in Christ. Now, in verses 12 through 15, he talks about the practical side of unity. What does that being one in Christ look like? As a church, as a community of faith, what does it look like to be one in Christ? Let's read verses 12 through 14 of chapter 3. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, with kindness, with humility, with gentleness, with patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Again, we notice this verse begins with therefore, connecting it with what went immediately before. So, since we're all one in Christ, as God's people, and the church, we are God's people, clothe yourselves with the qualities of compassion. Oh, is there anything more wonderful than having empathy for each other and compassion, caring for each other? Be kind. Kind. I once heard about a little girl saying a prayer, a little child, and she said, Lord, make all the bad people good. And Lord, make all the good people nice. As the people of God, we ought to be nice. We ought to be kind to one another. Humility. Humility is when we love each other as we love ourselves. Humility is when we look out for one another as we look out for ourselves. And so humility ought to be the hallmark of the church. Not pride, not arrogance, not self-obsession, but humbly caring for one another. Be gentle and be patient. Now reading these qualities of compassion and kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, we recognize this is true unity. When the church understands itself as one in Christ, this will be the kind of life we live with each other. And then he says, bear with each other and forgive one another. As all human beings, there are times when we kind of rub each other the wrong way. We all do things that we need forgiveness for, right? None of us are perfect. And even in the church, we kind of annoy each other at times. That's just part of being human. But we also, in Christ, we learn to forgive each other. With those little minor annoyances and ways we get on each other's nerves, and it happens at times, let us learn to practice forgiveness, to give and receive forgiveness from one another. Notice Paul says, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And he forgave us so much. Surely we can forgive each other the little things we do to get on each other's nerves. So this quality of forgiving grace, a forgiving spirit, allows us to function as one in Christ. And then Paul kind of wraps up by saying, over all these things, over compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience and forgiveness, above all, put on love. Because love is the thing that binds them all together in peace. Jesus once told his followers, people are going to know you're mine. They're going to know you're my disciples because you love one another. So, indeed, the quality of the church that should be most expressive of who we are is the fact that we love each other. Because we've been loved by Christ, and because Christ loves each of us, we ought to love one another. Now, this is what church unity looks like. It's not about always having the same opinion about everything. We do have differences of opinion. But true unity is about loving each other, caring for one another, forgiving one another, and treating each other with gentleness and humility and compassion. That is the life of the church. And that is the kind of life we ought to live as those who are the people of God. Notice Paul began this paragraph by saying you are God's chosen people. He has chosen you and called you by his grace to be his people, his church. And so you express that you are his by this kind of life. This is the true unity of the church. Join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Colossians.